A child born with a golden spoon asked his rich father to buy him a little brother. That rich child was the protagonist's older brother. Just because the words of his older brother who wished for a younger brother, the protagonist was adopted as the father's son. When he just turned 5 years old, this adopted child was named Liam, and he will be the protagonist of our story. Father took him from an orphanage and gave him a prosperous life that was beyond comparable to anyone else's, and his brother cherished him more than anyone else. They were a happy family. However, as all good things must come to an end, it was only beautiful until his brother lost interest in him. It was inevitable. Just like a kid gets bored with a new toy, after a while, the biological child lost interest in the adopted brother, and it felt like something prevented him from fitting in, and as they grew older and time went by, those walls grew stronger, and eventually they grew further apart from each other as if they were strangers from the beginning, although the rich family raised him just like they would a sheltered dog for fun. They tried their best because father and brother chose him. He never forgot his gratitude. The father had grown old and the two sons were all grown up. The biological older child grew up to look exactly like the father with a stern look on his face. His name was Savant, and even if the adopted son Liam didn't resemble on the father's face, he grew up to be a kind and a generous person. And one day, after 20 years since he became an adult, he was able to see his family's faces again after a long time. The father had died and everyone had gathered in the funeral. His father had a cold expression on his picture during his funeral, just like when he was alive. Those who cared for the father grieved and were crying, unable to hold back their sadness. However, somebody ignorantly broke the door inside the funeral home and came in abruptly. Unlike the other people inside the funeral home, somebody came inside that even shocked Liam as the subordinates bowed down their head to welcome their boss. It was actually his brother that came in with the same cold look as always. His name was Savant. Savant was the only person who did not look sad, but instead he had this evil smile on his face. It was almost as if he was happy to see his father dead. Father's death held a lot of meaning. Everything in his life started to fall apart. After the father's death, his existence and the family became irrelevant and he was excluded from his father's assets whatsoever. Up until then, he was married with 2 beautiful children. Were already grown up, a son and a daughter, even his family, who promised to take care of him for the rest of their lives, put more importance in the grandfather than Liam's existence. Liam's family soon fell apart after his father died. Just as the existence of father disappeared from his life, everything that he believed in started to fade like lie, and eventually he lost everything. He lived his life being genuinely thankful and giving to everyone, carrying the belief that pain is reduced and joy is multiplied when shared. He didn't leave a life deserving criticism from anyone, only now that he realized all of that was meaningless. Because the first person to strike at him was the one who he loved most, his wife. Her name was Julia. When they got married, he was a young, blissful guy and she was a beautiful soul, but after the death of his father, the smile went away. She asked him, how can he laugh when he has lost everything? How is he going to live and take care of the family? She was disappointed at him for not standing up for them, and blamed him for being just a good person and nothing else. His wife left him. Everything fell apart in his life. It has been a long time after that, and he is in his mid-40s now, living a sad life in an economy apartment all alone. He wakes up from his late sleep because of a phone call. He gets back to his senses and looks at the phone and sees that this call is from his son. Apparently, his son only calls him when he needs money. Even the picture on his desk is only of him and his son. His wife that left him and a daughter that went with her are no longer in the frame. The son is asking for 3 million won, as he says that there's a lot of things that he has to pay for. He certainly cannot deny his son for any money, as he tries to tell him that he will find a way no matter what. So just wait for a while, even though he doesn't have that money. He even has to apologize to his own son for being incompetent. He tries to tell him that he loves him, but before the son even hears the rest, he is talking to his friend outside the phone, saying that his ATM is super emotional nowadays, so it's so slow. He was laughing at his father and calling him an ATM, not knowing that his father could still hear him from the phone. Unable to hear more of the insult from his own son, he hangs up the phone in disappointment. He already knew that. But why would a college student need 3 million won as expected? There is no one he can contact to borrow some money, and even if there was, who would lend him 3 million? He still has the rich brother, but he hasn't spoken to him in years and they are not in good terms at all. It was only possible for someone like father. But there was no use looking for someone who was already gone. He remembers his brother is the only one who can help him out. But the question is, would he? Having no options at all. He had to come to his brother's house without any pride at all. To think that he would come all the way here. He hasn't even received contact from them, so he wonders if he should go back. However, there is nowhere else to go and there is no one that he can go. But here he's only doing this for his son. He rings the doorbell and someone asks him from inside for his purpose. He introduces himself, but the doorbell says that his brother is not there at the moment. He recognizes the voice that it was his sister-in-law. However, she was not interested in making any kind of small talk with him and asks him why he was there. Because they were not so close for him. Come show up like this unannounced. Apologizing for being shameless. He requests the sister-in-law to give him a little bit of her time, as he has a request for her and she can refuse if she wants. As he keeps on begging her to let him in for just a little bit of time, she just presses the button and lets him inside. As the door opens and he tries to come in, this beautiful lady, he's just standing in front of him. Her name is Angela and she is the wife of his older brother. She invites him in, making some remarks about having to call a person like him a brother-in-law. He can only bow down his head in shame, however. She tells him not to look so sad because they were in the same situation. He doesn't really understand what she meant by that and asked her. But she was also a bit surprised that he didn't know about a certain thing. So she told him to forget about it. Liam was left a little bit confused by this, so then tells him to make himself comfortable here, and then asks him, what was the reason for him to come here all of a sudden? What reason? That he would swallow his pride. After a few seconds of silence and embarrassing looks from the sister-in-law, Liam finally told her that he was there to ask them for some money. There was a noticeable smile on Angela's face. And as she puts down her glass of drink, she asks him how much did he want. He softly says that he needed 3 million won. He couldn't speak any further unless she would give him an answer. She looked at him for a while and then she laughed a bit, saying that this was utterly ridiculous, now the insult continuous. He again apologizes to her if he made her uncomfortable, and promises to pay her back as soon as possible. So just this once, please lend him some money. However, she even mocks him on his ability to even pay her back. She tells him that even if he was an adopted child, he was once called the son of a man who used to be called king, but he came crawling here, because he doesn't even have not 300 million or 30 million, but only 3 million. She spoke roughly at him again, saying that it was a relief that her husband wasn't there. Otherwise, it would have been quite a sight. Liam couldn't say anything but to clench his trousers. Angela could clearly see his situation, then she continued to say, "Don't you know it's because you're in this position, that the woman who used to be your wife is spreading her gaming console for a different man?" It was true, but still way too much insulting. But he couldn't do anything but to apologize to her. Angela looked at him and she realized that she had crossed the line. So she got up from his face and then apologized to him. It couldn't be denied that the last part was a bit too much. She also had some things going on. So she has been sensitive nowadays, so she was sorry for going overboard. She told him to clear his head for a little bit, as she needs to go to her room for a minute and then she leaves back to her room. Liam is left alone in the room waiting for her. And as he looks around the room, he notices that he was picture on the wall of his older brothers. Family. It was Savant, Angela, and their daughter. Just as he was looking at the family and missing his own, Angela had already came back from the room and asked him, "Isn't my daughter pretty?" She grew up a lot in the time that Angela couldn't see her, and it was truly relief that she doesn't resemble her father. Then Angela sits beside Liam and then hands him the 3 million bills.